Simon Yates retires? Surely not. Jonas Vingegaard to ride the Giro? Wout van Aert's cyclocross season goes from bad to worse to disastrous. And Derek G finally finds a home. Hey folks, welcome to the Ride and Thrive podcast with me, your host, Dave Shields. And we've got our weekly roundup of cycling news for this week. Now, how about that news then, that headline news? I've had to adapt my my headlines and the running order for these stories this week because this came in just a few days ago. Yes, that's right, Simon Yates, the super climbing domestique from Visma Lease Bike, has announced his retirement. Now, this has shocked quite a few people for a number of reasons, but namely it's timing at the start of the season. Now, Yates still had a year to run on his contract with Visma Lease Bike. He was due to his contract was due up at the end of 26, so he still had this season to go. So it has surprised a few people that he's decided to go now. Now, he did put on a post on Instagram, and basically he'd said that he thought it was the right time. And although it was a shock to people, then he's been thinking about it for some time. So obviously he's decided that the time is now, and he's thanked a few people on there as well for their support. Now, I'm sure it'll come out over the coming weeks and months, you know, the real reasons. A coach has hinted at Visma that there's a lot of pressure put on cyclists nowadays, on riders, a lot of expectation and a lot of demands. And that he believed that Yates just didn't have the desire anymore, you know, to try and fulfill those expectations. So we'll see anyway. But he's had a fantastic career, and I guess for him it's a good a time as any. I think he's only 33 years old. So we'll see what he goes on to do. Now he's had a great career. He's won 2 Grand Tours. He's won the Vuelta, and in 2018, and the Giro d'Italia as well, which was last year. So he's had some really good achievements. He's won numerous stage races in Grand Tour as well. He's won 6 stages in the Giro. He's won a handful or 3 stages in the Tour de France and 2 Vuelta España stages as well. So it's a career for any pro cyclist to be proud of. So well done to you, Simon Yates. Now, it will leave, I believe, a little bit of a hole in Visma, and let's see how that they tackle this. Now, like I say, he was a bit of a climber, or quite a bit of a climber, and a climbing domestique alongside Jorgensen and Sepp Kuss. So we'll see how they fill that hole and have the extra person in there to try and fill his rather large boots. Now, this leads on to our next story, because I was going to be mentioning Yates originally, along with the next story, which was around Jonas Vingegaard wanting to ride the Giro d'Italia this year. So I was going to factor in how Yates won it last year. How are they going to work together, and would Vingegaard be the leader, and what he obviously would be, but. It looks like he is going to ride it. Again, these are just rumours. Nothing has been confirmed about Visma. I do believe that I think I can keep recycling this story, because I have mentioned it in the past. Now, there is an interview with a Spanish newspaper that with Vingegaard, and that heavily hints that out of all the Grand Tours, he would like to win this one, because he basically hasn't won it. So if he wins this one, he's actually won all 3. So he would really, he said in that if there was one race he could do, one more race he could do, this would be it, the Giro. And then they also go on to say that he has struck up a deal, a closed agreement is the term that he used. I do not know what that means, but he's got an agreement with the Giro d'Italia organisers to actually ride in that race, to turn up at the start line in Bulgaria. So again, I think their plans will be announced soon. The next story again is around Visma as well, so they may be delaying things a little bit because of these few little hiccups they've had to get around. So I am obviously hoping to see Jonas at the Giro d'Italia. I think it will be great for that race. So and I'd love to see him win it as well. So we'll keep an eye on that and how that story transpires. So again, we move on to another Visma story, that of poor old Wout van Aert. Now, I mentioned him last week in the show, and this was to do with the rivalry between him and Mathieu van der Poel in the cyclocross season, the winter cyclocross season. And basically, I'd said last week that their rivalry hadn't really transpired because of Van der Poel's dominance in cyclocross. And also that Van Aert had been dogged by a few minor crashes and punctures and things like that. So his cyclocross season wasn't going that well anyway. Now he had a crash and he was hobbling a bit and he ended up going to hospital, and it turns out that he's got a fractured ankle. And this obviously put pay to his cyclocross season. That was that over and done and dusted. And it was also thought that it might even hinder the start to his road season, which starts in around about March. So and he was hoping to be riding the classics then as well. Now, there is a Belgian newspaper, I believe. A Belgian newspaper has run a story on this, and they've got inside information, they said, on Van Aert. And they reckon that his injury isn't as bad as what was first thought. In the fact, yes, there is a fracture, but there's no ligament or tendon damage, and that he may be fit to ride sooner than actually thought. So they think that he's going to their February altitude training camp to see how he gets on there. And they also believe that he's going to be starting his planned first race of the season, which was Strade Bianche, which is in Italy, and that begins on March the 7th. So now, to me, that's quite a quick turnaround. And I'd hate for them to rush it, and then the damage not to be repaired and healed. They obviously know what they're doing, So I'm sure that won't be the case. But I wish Van Aert the very best and hope that he can get fit again, because I'd love to see him race some of those one-dayers, the spring classics. It would be great to see him there to cheer him on. Okay, so final story this week. Poor old Derek G. And this is, I seem to have been mentioning him quite a few times in the last few weeks. He's only in the last week or so signed a new contract with a new team. Now, if you remember, he left what was then Israel Premier Tech, saying that basically it wasn't in line with his beliefs and values to actually stay with that team. Obviously, with the situation with Israel and Gaza, all the rest of it. So he left the team, and they were basically saying, you've got no reason, that's not a reason to leave the team. You're in breach of contract, because he still had a few years to go. And they were actually suing him for like 30 million euros or something like that. And that was a situation that was ongoing. And obviously then they changed their name, or they changed their identity and became NSN, Never Say Never Cycling. And yeah, since then they have released him from that. They've dropped the lawsuit basically, and Lidl Trek have come in for G. So yeah, that's a nice ending to that story. Obviously, Lidl Trek would have smoothed it over with NSN with money, I guess. So yeah, Derek G's gone to Lidl Trek. Now, Lidl Trek have got some absolute superstars in that team. Now, let's see who they've got. So he's going to be joining Mads Pedersen and Juan Ayuso, for a couple of names. And then if we also add into there Captain America himself, Quinn Simmons, Matthias Skelmoser, and Jonathan Milan. We've got loads of names in Little Trek. Now they want to become the number one team. Good luck to them. And I think they're going to have a headache. It'd be like a football manager having all the stars, and having to leave people on the bench and who to pick and who to choose, who's going to be the leader, who's going to fulfill what role. But I guess it's a nice headache. It'll be a nice problem to have, So we'll see how that we'll see how that plays out in the coming weeks, months, and years, I guess. Okay, folks, that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in. Please comment any comments you've got. I've had a few comments recently. Mostly people that have been correcting some of my facts. So please feel free to do that. It's all good. So if I've got something wrong, please make a comment and let me know. Other than that, I shall see you next week for another instalment of the cycling news. And until then, bye for now.
Yes, get in.